Yeah, my name's Coral. B can't be here today, but yeah, interestingly, we both worked in libraries, archives and museums, and actually we've gone in different directions because I started in archives, libraries and museums, and B was in research, and now she's gone into heritage and I've firmly in research, but we're both creative technologists, we're both makers. And we work on a lot of creative technology projects together for the cultural sector. But what we're really interested in is participatory design. So how can we involve end users in these kind of technologies that are changing their lives? How can we get them engaged in the kind of questions and the discussions that they might not think are actually for them? But I just wanted to reflect on this moment. Last time me and Stella decided to do something together, ended up with 800 people dancing to algorithms in the British Library. I'm also a live coder, so kind of co-organised and curated this big event. And I wanted to bring it up because I've noticed on Twitter recently, people kind of saying about great nights that they've had when they can all be together in this really strange COVID webcam time. And a lot of people are posting these pictures. And I just thought that was really special and I wanted to share it because it happened in a library. So what is AI and why do we care? So one of the things about artificial intelligence is it's a technology, it's also a concept. It's thinking about a broad science of how machines can be intelligent like humans. It can be narrow, it can be general, it can be super. Often when we're talking about AI, what we're talking about is machine learning. So how can machines learn through experience or analysing patterns in data? But for most people, AI is something from films. It's something that really intelligent people do in universities or big companies. It's something that we can't see. It's something that we can't access. And in the media, it often looks like this. It's blue, it's networks, it's numbers, it's robots, it's pointing, it's brains. It's very masculine as well. If you do a Google image search for artificial intelligence, I did this one yesterday when I was sorting out my slides, and this is the kind of thing we get. And it just doesn't really tell us anything about what artificial intelligence is. So this is kind of what we're dealing with when we start to talk about this technology. So we say it, we've heard the word, but people don't necessarily kind of connect with what it means. And that's one of the things that me and B are particularly interested in. So 8 billion, it's a big number. That is the number of conversational AI, voice-enabled devices that they predict will be in circulation by 2023. So it's about 2 years away. So we're kind of now talking to these devices and having relationships with them. But one big issue is the people that are making them. So according to the Alan Turing Institute, 17% of people working in technology jobs in the UK are women. So we've got a huge disparity there. And when we start intersecting that with questions of race, the numbers become even smaller. So this is the percentage of Black women working for Google, one of the biggest technology companies on the planet. So when we have these kinds of issues, we wind up with problems because we've got development teams that are, creating these experiences for people, but they don't reflect everybody else's experience and they're kind of being pushed onto us. So the UN published a report called I'd Blush If I Could, which is pointing out some of the responses that come from these systems. And when we create assistants, for some reason, they default to female voices, probably because we're more used to hearing women in assistant roles. But also, we don't really want assistants who are going to say no to us. So we wind up with things like if you'd tell Siri if you're a slut, for example, which is a gendered insult, Siri would say, I'd blush if I could. And you couldn't help but think if women were in majority in positions of power on these teams, we just wouldn't wind up with these things going to market with these kinds of gendered responses within them. So when we talk about chatbots, we're thinking about smart speakers. You might have one in your home. There might be one in your television. There's probably one within software in your computer. And this is the kind of thing that we're thinking about. We're also thinking about you can use a chatbot to order a pizza. You're not having a very in-depth conversation with that chatbot particularly, but when we look at Microsoft Show Ice, which is their big chatbot within China and Asia specifically, it's got over 2 million users, and Microsoft kind of show off that it's a chatbot that you can fall in love with. And the number of conversational turns people are having with Show Ice really shows you that people are starting to form a connection with it. But you're not forming a connection with this young girl, you're forming a connection with Microsoft. And people aren't necessarily thinking about that. And when Apple released, The Guardian found a leaked paper from Apple when they were talking about Siri. One of the things that Siri designers have to take to think about when they write Siri is that Siri shouldn't be presented as being written by a human, which asks questions, because then you have you're on your phone or a speaker in your house where you're talking to Siri, but you're not. It's designed so you don't think that you're talking to the corporation that is Apple. So there are some issues there. So with all of these kinds of questions in mind, thinking about, voice interfaces being wonderful and really accessible, but why do we give them personalities? Thinking about the people that are making them, but yet end users aren't really making them. We've decided that we wanted to give people a voice in the creation of these products that are affecting their everyday lives. So we started a community called Women Reclaiming AI. So Women Reclaiming AI is a collaborative voice assistant that's now being written by over 100 women. And we get women involved in this through workshops that we do around the UK. We've also been around to a few places in Europe. And we talk to women about AI and what these kinds of concepts are and what they mean. And then we ask them, so if you wanted to write a woman's personality, and we are inclusive with this as well, in that we're inclusive of trans, non-binary and genderqueer too. So if we're going to write this kind of personality of what we want to be presented as in technology, because at the moment kind of a group of white men are essentially doing this for us. So if we want to make these decisions, what is it going to sound like? So we're, and then that we have a shared platform for writing and editing so people can carry on editing it afterwards. So we're really starting to develop a collective intelligence on what it is to be a woman, as well as a really interesting data set of women's language that is accessible then through our own chatbot that we're developing. So kind of leading on from this, thinking about where we're going to take the project next. I think I'm interested in the previous presenter's kind of last provocation, because at the moment we have this quite big set of women's writing and women's language and the language of women that inspire us as well, all credited, all referenced. And it is a co-creation of over 100 women and growing. How do we use this data set in a really positive way? How do we use this language in a really positive way? How do we share the chatbot? At the moment, because there's a very small number of people who know really good questions to ask the chatbot to get good responses out of it. So how do we kind of start to think about visualizing this? And then how can we expand this as well? So we get more people, more end users, really engaged in these technologies that are changing our lives and feeling that they can ask questions about artificial intelligence rather than just worrying that it's big robots pointing at them, which doesn't, make a lot of sense. So the next thing that we're doing is and our first one's going to be at MozFest, we're starting to write a collective manifesto about how we as women want to be represented in technology, artificial intelligence enabled technology, also robotics. And I guess kind of then creating a new archive or a new data set of women's feelings about how they want their identities to be represented or not represented, and how we can start to think about the complexity of what identity is, rather than boiling it down into, you know, one vision of Alexa or whatever that's kind of spread around the planet. And then think about how we can, you know, have these technologies that actually work for the benefit of everyone rather than a relatively small number of people. And that's my 10 minutes. Thank you. Oh, you can contact us.
Great,
Right.
thanks so much for that, Coral. So now I believe,
Stop sharing. Ah, there we go.
at the top. Yeah, there you go. So now I believe we have about 5 to 8 minutes for questions. So if there's